us, who's a senior reporter with the Quint. So she brings light and life to all the conversations with her eloquent and engaging style of moderating. So if you have seen her Instagram, you'll see that she has interviewed the biggest who's and who's of the industry. So thank you so much, Swati, for being with us here today.
Thank you.
So Swati, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today as we discuss the role of and the importance of media and entertainment in empowering women. You know, before I go ahead, I have to give a big shout out to the women in uniform who've turned up today in huge numbers. It's always so good to see all of you. Thank you. You know, media and entertainment have always been and will continue to be an extremely powerful tool. So it's really imperative that they are the force of the change that we need in our society to educate and tell stories that not only empower women but also promote gender equality and positivity around us. So today I have with me some of the brightest minds, and I can't wait to know what you all have to say about this. You know, whenever we talk about the subject of women empowerment or gender representation on screen, it's only natural that the focus sometimes shifts towards the shortcomings or the issues that we face. But if I could start this panel on a positive note and ask all of you to answer a recent role that you've maybe seen on screen, a story that you heard that made you believe that there is a shift, that there is progress when it comes to gender representation on screen. Would you like to start, sir?
Hi, good morning. And very interesting that a policeman is being asked the first question. Otherwise, the image is that police is, it reaches late. So, one story which has impressed me a lot is perhaps Kahani. The role that has been given, and that was an amazing twist. And certainly the role played by the protagonist has been really very impressive. And a strong story, talks about women empowerment.
Yes.
And that is what impressed me a lot. And if you ask me a couple of more movies, there are many, Badaio is again an amazing trend, which is normally you don't think of. So that is again a very powerful movie. But at the same time, because we're talking about the media and entertainment, I don't know. I haven't seen many of the women playing a very important role. I mean, women police officers. There have been few, but not on a very important role. So as you said, we have so many police officers here. That it's a great, scene to see that. So I hope that in future we will be portrayed in a better. Thank you.
So what about you?
Okay, so for me, there are a couple of movies that have really kind of had an impact on me. First of all, Hidden Figures, which is a bunch of African American women who actually worked in the NASA, and this was a phenomenal movie that brings out the power and the strength of women. There's another movie which hit me really because it was so subtle, and that was English Winglish. And it was so subtle because it brought out the male chauvinism in a very subtle way, where he says, "Isi mein to tum achhi ho," when she's making laddu. And therefore that was another movie for me which brought out in a very subtle way as to what needs to be done. And even if I look at the OTT, for example, Game of Thrones. I'm a big GOT fan, and I do believe that the world is divided into two parts. One who have watched GOT and those who haven't. And therefore those of you who haven't watched GOT, I'm going to judge you. Let me take that forward. Look at the characters, starting right from the negative characters like Cersei,
Yes.
Mother of Dragons, to the positive characters like Sansa or Arya. Extremely powerful characters.
Absolutely.
And finally, the last one is the subtle messaging that comes from movies in parts. Gangs of Wasseypur. Gangs of Wasseypur, where there is a small dialogue, "Mana thodi kiya hai, par misal nahi chahiye." That itself is a brilliant way of portraying very, very subtly. So all of these have had a big impact.
Okay. Ma'am, what about you?
अभी इन दोनों ने कुछ फिल्मों का नाम लिया है. विमेन इन पॉलिटिक्स अगर हम देखेंगे तो आई रिमेम्बर आंधी, पिंक का मैडम ने अभी उल्लेख किया था, और इंग्लिश का भी हो गया है. क्वीन वॉज अ फिल्म जिसमें थोड़ा सेट अच्छा टोन सेट किया है ऐसे. लेकिन आई नो वी शुड टॉक इन पॉजिटिव वे, बट फिर भी जो मीडिया में एक निगेटिव टाइप का पोर्ट्रेयल महिलाओं का होता है एज अ विक्टिम, एज अ कमोडिटी, वो मुझे ज़्यादा चिंतित करता है. व्हेन आई वर्क फॉर अ NGO भारतीय स्त्री शक्ति, तो मुझे उसके बारे में थोड़ी आपत्ति जरूर लगती है. एंड समटाइम्स आई फील कि द इंडस्ट्री इज एंगेजिंग NGOs इन दे शुड गो एंड अपोज समवेयर लाइक दैट, तो हमें वो भी करना पड़ता है.
एक्चुअली क्या है ना कि बहुत सारी फिल्में हैं और पिछले कुछ दशकों में आई थिंक वो फिल्में और ज़्यादा होती जा रही हैं. हम जो एक नया एक टर्म है ना कि फीमेल लेड फिल्म्स या फीमेल लेड सीरीज आजकल, यू नो, स्पेशली ऑन OTT प्लेटफॉर्म्स लाइक Netflix, you know, they are doing really well. So definitely there's a shift. But you know, for me, it's not just about the female led films that are creating this sense of empowerment. Today, as an actor, मैं अपनी बात करती हूँ, आपके पास कोई स्क्रिप्ट आती है, आप स्क्रिप्ट पढ़ते हो, तो आप उसमें पढ़ के आपको लगता है कि अरे जो ये लड़की का कैरेक्टर है, ये खाली हीरो की जर्नी की एक सहारा नहीं है कि हीरो जंग में जाएगा और मैं उसके लिए खाना बनाऊंगी और वेट करूंगी और उसकी दुआएं पढ़ूंगी. लड़की क्यों जंग पे नहीं जा सकती? You know, and I feel that shift in the way we are approaching films, we are approaching series, approaching storytelling has come about. Today I know, and I can speak for myself, you know, many other colleagues of mine are rejecting, saying no, you know, give us more to do, because women, I mean, I've never met a woman who's not strong. Strength के बड़े सारे रूप होते हैं, but I've never met a woman who's not strong. So why are we not representing that strength in our movies? Because when a little girl sees somebody that looks like her making those brave choices, she's also empowered.
Right.
So I think there are a lot more that are happening, and I think all of us are standing on shoulders of so many women, not just the leading ladies as it's called, but also so many other women who probably did character parts or smaller bits, but their contribution was really important to how they brought about this change.
I think everyone's important when you're talking about a change, right? It can't be one person led at all. So what about you?
Going back a few years, one of the films I released was a film called Edinburgh Coach, which was highly inspirational, which actually changed the way we thought about you know, how women would actually change and impact society. It's based on a true story, and I think Julia Roberts did a terrific job in it. Moving forward, since a couple of them have talked about the police, and I happen to be a policeman's son, so I would say Delhi crime and the portrayal of Shefali Chaya, including addressing the stereotype and saying "Madam Sir,"
Yeah.
it kind of plays out, and it showed the power of what a police officer can do, really, even in uniform.
Right.
So there have been several, but I think this one couple of them that just come to mind.
Just a couple of things that I wanted to. So thank you for bringing up English, and also Delhi crime. And the reason I say this is that, you know, when we talk about representation of women and roles, the representation and shift happens in several ways. So some are like very direct. So for me, if I had to pick a film, I would say Darlings, more recently. Help in shifting things at a cultural normative level. So yeah, for me it would be those two.
Thank you so much, all of you. I'm going to begin with Dr. Himanshu Rai. So, you know, when we look at films, we talk about them being a big cultural force, and there's always a divided opinion that films are a big influence of the society, whereas some believe they aren't as big an influence. Some believe that it probably shapes us, the way we think, the way we interact and behave with other people, and others believe there's very little influence. So you are an educator. So when you look at a film, how do you think it influences the young minds today?
So, you know, that's a very interesting question, Swati, because you're from Dagi College, if I got it right. How many of you know that? Nobody. Except, you know, some of us who did that particular homework. Exactly. Now, we have to create those kind of stories because they have a subliminal impact saying that, this person is not just about this, but there's much more to that person.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir, for that. Let's move on to you next then. You've been around in the industry for over 10 years now, and from your first very role you've been lauded for the work you've done, for the roles you've portrayed on screen. Today, as you sit here 10 years later and a little more, how do you see the industry evolving when it comes to depiction of women on screen? That's one part of the question. And the second is, as a producer, what are some of the steps that you would like to take to ensure that there is more women representation on the sets, not just on screen?
Two things. First of all, I think I was really fortunate, to be honest. Like Himanshu sir reminded all of us, the first dialogue I ever uttered on the big screen was "Permission to lena chahiye," which talks about consent, but of course in a fun way. But that's the whole idea, right? Nobody's trained that we have to make boring films or we have to bore people with I tell them, oh, this is right or not. But no, within an entertaining format, how do you get the point across? Because that's what really sticks. As opposed to just so yeah, I think I've been really fortunate, to be very honest, that I think I because of thanks to my parents and my history honors degree and college education, I think I was slightly more aware of what I was doing, and also my parents insisted that I finish my education and then move to Bombay too. And I think that really made all the difference. See what happens, with female actors, there's a certain narrative, as if we are almost like apples. After they're ripe, they're no longer any good. You have to sort of debut at a younger age, and by the time you're married or whatever, now you're not so, what is the word, marketable anymore, desirable anymore. Bhai ladkiyan hain, amrut thodi hain. But I think it's so cool today that so many of my colleagues are getting married and having babies and all in the public eye, as opposed to even 10 years ago where it was sort of like a taboo thing, right? And even in the media, how they were spoken about. If a woman got pregnant, God forbid, or had put on a few kgs, it was almost as if it was a cardinal sin and people were mocking it. And I think there is a big shift in society which is also being represented by films. Right. Even when I was growing up, I did not have so many role models that I looked up to. But today, there are many. So when I turned producer, the first film that we decided to do was a film called Double XL. Because when I joined the business, everyone said, "Arey Huma, to kitni achhi acting karti," but she's a little plump. And I was like, it's almost as if a female body was only supposed to look a certain way. So what about all those other women who don't have straight silky hair, who don't have a certain body type? Are they not allowed to feel beautiful or empowered or seen or represented? We're a very diverse country, with very diverse and beautiful women. But it's almost as if there is a mainstream narrative that has been, put upon us. Yeah. So Double XL was the first one that we did, which was taking it head on. It had me, it had Sonakshi Sinha in it, outsider, So we tried to take the entire thing, head on. I was playing a small town girl, she was playing a girl from South Delhi, saying this is a problem that pervades everybody. Just because you are a woman from a certain class or a strata, you're not excluded. So those are the kind of stories, I'm interested in. Like for me, it's really important that when I read a script, I'm trying to play a character which is a real, breathing, three-dimensional woman. Yeah. It's not that, oh, she's a bossy woman. What do you mean bossy? We never use that term for guys, do we? No. We don't. But if a girl is assertive, then she's bossy. And I feel somewhere the way, like for example, when I did Monica, Oh My Darling for Netflix, and Vasan and I were having this discussion, on paper, what is it? It's a glam doll character who's sleeping with the whole office and is blackmailing them. A few years back, a character like this is, oh, can I say the word? She's a slut. Or she's a blackmailer, or she's a vamp. But the lens in which, and thanks to Vasan and Netflix, and the lens to which we're trying to represent that character, that everybody, it's a black comedy, everybody's black. Everybody's wrong. Everybody's making those choices, but when a woman does something, she's called a vamp. So the idea is that we're trying to bring about a conversation about how can we change and push the envelope a little bit and change these conversations. And it is by, I guess, producing stuff, writing stuff, directing stuff, and there are a lot more women today behind the scenes than in front, and I think that has made all the difference. भाई क्या होता है ना, अब आप पिक्चर बनाओगे, आपको डायरेक्टर बनना है किसी को, बनना है राइटर डायरेक्टर बनना है किसी को, अरे उठाइए हाथ, शर्माइए नहीं. तो जब आप कोई कहानी लिखोगे अपने बारे में सोचोगे तो you'll obviously write something that you know ना, जो जीवन आपने जिया है, correct? So that's what happens. If the more women you have that are writing, that are producing, that are directing, the more stories you will write, about your stories.
Thank you so
Spoken
much.
too much?
No, please. We'd love to hear some more. So encouraging to hear the steps that you are going to take as a producer to bring about this change. I think it's very important. Because recently there was a study that I read that said that whenever there were more women on greenlighting a project or helming a project, we saw more women representation on the sets. And I think that is something that's very, very important.
That does happen. Till a few years ago, अगर लड़कियों को काम से कोई ED भी आता था, तुम costume कर लो. It's like the easy stuff is given to you. You're a costume ED, or your job is to make sure the actor leaves the van and comes on set on time. The soft jobs, not the real jobs. But today that is changing. I know so many people who ask to continue supervisors or first ADs, and they're associate directors, and they're really strong, powerful women. We at least try in my company that we try and have as many number of female people working in the crew, because the more number of women that are working in the crew, the more safer environment it is. And that's a fact. And the more they feel empowered, in case somebody misbehaves with them on set, then you know that you have someone to talk to. You don't feel like, oh, if I raise a voice, then I will be that girl, who said this guy harassed me or whatever. And I think all of us will identify, right? A lot of us don't speak out about sexual harassment because we don't want to be that girl, जिसके साथ ये हुआ था. But the more women there are, they'll be able to relate to it and be able to take action.
Thank you so much, Huma, for that. We will come back to you with another question very quickly. But now, Mr. Virendra Mishra, if I may ask you, you're someone who works very closely with different gender-varied issues. So if I had to ask you, is there a story that you could share with us that really moved you or impacted you in a way that you would love to see it on the cellulite so that the world can know about it?
Thank you for asking this question. It's very interesting. Let me tell you, because everyone is asking me as a police officer, but I'm a storyteller as well. So I published my first short story book in 2009, and that was women-centric. Then I wrote a novel, Treatise from a Deathbed, and that was again a woman-centric. I'm writing a web series that again is a woman-centric. So that is very interesting. As you said, you have to live to write. So every man lives, amongst women, in between women. So certainly we can't miss them. One thing which I really feel sad about our movies is that we objectify women a lot. I don't know for what reason. If you see stalking and running behind villain, even if they say no, they will keep on doing that, and then the woman will fall for you. The girl will fall for you. I don't know why it has been normalized. And as students of sociology, many of you must be here, you know what normalization is. Because and as we have been talking about the impact that leaves on the student. And ma'am was talking about the film Kabir. I was working in...
We're actually a champion for it. And that campaign...
Yes,
you used to be a rights advocate with the organizer. So when my team got through, they were like, oh, it's amazing how, that association has been so long, and that campaign had that line, जितनी ज़्यादा औरतें होंगी, ये दुनिया उनके लिए उतनी ही सुरक्षित होगी. So completely feel like just more women out there and the opportunities that we can give them is such a huge shift in culture in creating safer spaces, especially in the public sphere. So thank you for championing that cause.
No, thank you for doing that campaign and for having student volunteers like me be part of it, because honestly, whatever you do in life later, and I think which is why programs like this are so important. Because the more younger people are part of these conversations, when you go out into the world, you carry that awareness and knowledge with you. And so thank you.
Odessa, what about you?
So I think in some sense I've answered the first question already. So I'll go back to what she was talking about. I started my career in the entertainment business working for a lady. It's called Lady with a Torch, Columbia Pictures. And I built my career with them. And when I got into the business, the distribution area, especially for the Hollywood films, was a boys' club, they used to call it. So we changed that by bringing in women, and we never looked back. I think that was the smartest thing we ever did, because they worked hardest. And one of them actually ended up working at Netflix a few years ago. So that was a very good part. The other good thing was that Again, contrary to some of the expectations here, I worked with at least four or five female directors and released their films. Whether it was Meera Nair, whether it was Gurinder Chadda, whether it was Deepa Mehta, or whether it was Revati Menon, we released all those films. In those days, they used to think these films cannot find a release. And we said, no, we'll take it on as a challenge, and we did it. So, and we found a lot of success doing female director films. So I think going back so many years, we still had them contributing quite substantially. Moving ahead in our current role, like he said, small things, like we say, zooming in, we partnered with the Salam Balak Trust and with the Whistling Woods, and we got a young girl called Jyoti More into the film program for diploma for the first year, for 1 year. And she's come out very well, and I think she's going to mainstream in the industry. Before this, there were 2 boys that we taken, but this time we consciously decided that we'll go with a girl who will be able to do it. And if you actually look at some of the other activities going back at the MPA, over the last, since 2013, we have the APSA Film Academy Fund. Almost 50% of the representation has been women.
So refreshing to hear that.
Most of our panels, we've never really thought of it in that way, but when we did it, we realized that they were such important contributors with their stories, with their ideas, with their contributions themselves, that it never came as a planned objective, but it grew into something like that. More the panels that we do, whether it was at Fiki Frames or any other panels that we sponsor, it's always had women-dominated panels too, right through the years. In fact, if you look at my own senior management team at the MPA, the majority, from our global policy head to our Asia president, to our general counsel, to our director of communications, all the top ladies, chief of ops, all of them are ladies, all of them are women. So we've never really had this problem to some extent. It was always there. It was never really the elephant in the room. And if you come back to the very recent film, The Elephant Whisperer, it's got an Oscar nomination, and it's Karthik Gonzalez who's directed it. So they have been there right through. And, some of them have not probably been as vocal or as not so prominent maybe, but I think they have always silently been creating stuff that we've always been proud and we've always been looking up to.
Thank you so much. I really hope there comes a point that we don't need to have a conversation like that because it's so normal. Like you said,
that should get normalized.
Absolutely. Huma, what about you? A role that you felt broke stereotype for you? Yours or anybody else's?
Many actually. I really enjoyed Darlings. I really enjoyed Thappad. I thought when I saw that film, then I wish I'd done that film, But I think Taapsee did a wonderful job, and Anubhav sir directed a beautiful film because, in a country where, domestic violence is quite prevalent, to talk and fight about ek thappad, in itself, and I know how conventional theatrical wisdom, runs, right? Ki ye kya picture hai, koi nahi dekhega, ye kya bakwas bundle idea, and this is how people talk, right? But for a film at that point in time to come and to do well at the box office, gave me a lot of heart, to be honest. I really believed in this country, in the people, in being able to create a better world. So that film really resonated with me.
We talk about physical violence, right? But there's so much up here also that I really hope that someday there's a film that talks about the emotional abuse. That's the one thing that I would love to watch.
Till then, we just have to do therapy, my sister.
Ma'am, what about you?
I will quote here one Marathi drama, Dev Babadi. I think most of the Mumbai people must have watched that. That's right. और religious क्षेत्र में जो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन होता है, इसमें भगवान विठल की पत्नी और उनके जो परम भक्त तुकाराम है, उनकी पत्नी मिलते हैं और उनके बीच में जो डायलॉग है उसके ऊपर ये केवल दो औरतें ही हैं इसमें। ऐसे एक वेरी गुड मराठी बहुत अच्छा ड्रामा है जो फॉर ब्रेकिंग द बैरियर्स इन रिलीजियस थिंकिंग, रिलीजियस वे, मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा। फिल्में तो बहुत सारी है, बहुत सारे लोगों ने कोट की है, बट आई विल अप्रिशिएट व्हाट वीरेंद्र जी हैज़ टोल्ड अबाउट द स्टोरी। एंड अगर ऐसी कथाओं के ऊपर कुछ कंटेंट आता है मीडिया से तो पीपल ऑल्सो विल लाइक, पीपल विल बी एजुकेटेड फ्रॉम दैट। और ऐसे कितने हम जब सामाजिक कार्य करते हैं तो इतने अनुभव है। सरोगेट मदर की क्या उसकी मानसिकता होगी, इसके ऊपर अच्छा मूवी हो सकता है। आपने बीड़ में जो गन्ना कटाई करने वाली महिलाएं उनकी स्टोरी के बारे में सुना होगा, बिकॉज व्हेन अ कॉन्ट्रैक्टर एंगेजेस अ फैमिली फॉर गन्ना कटाई, दे consider husband and wife as unit, and during her menstruation it is very difficult for her to cut the गन्ना, जाके खेत में गन्ना काटना बड़ा मुश्किल होता है उसके लिए। That's why many women undergone hysterectomy there, that was the story। तो ऐसे कई सारी चीज़ें हैं, मतलब इतने उदाहरण दे सकते हैं कि किसी गांव में अकाल हुआ है, अकाल पड़ा है, तो यंग लड़कियां वहाँ की सोचती है कि हम इस साल शादी नहीं करेंगे। क्यों? कि हमें अब पिताजी के ऊपर बोझ नहीं बनना है क्योंकि फसल से कुछ आया नहीं है। इसके काउंटर में मेरा एक प्रश्न है कि ऐसा लड़कों को भी लगना चाहिए कि हमने विदाउट दहेज शादी करनी चाहिए। लेकिन ऐसी कितनी रियल टाइम स्टोरीज हैं जो अगर मीडिया में आती है तो उसमें एजुकेशन भी होगा एंड आई गेस एंटरटेनमेंट भी होगा। एंड एंटरटेनमेंट ऑलवेज इज नॉट हैविंग ब्यूटीफुल पिक्चर्स और लाइक दैट, लेकिन रियल लाइफ टाइम स्टोरीज को अगर हम देखेंगे तो मुझे लगता है ऐसी स्टोरीज आनी चाहिए। वन मोर पॉइंट आई विल ऐड टू व्हाट हुमा हैज सेड, विमेन रिप्रेजेंटेशन इन प्रोड्यूसिंग, इन एक्टिंग, इन डायरेक्शन, वो तो है ही, बट विमेन एट मेनी कंट्रोलिंग बॉडीज एज मॉडरेटिंग बॉडीज या सर्टिफिकेशन बोर्ड्स एंड सो मेनी थिंग्स आर देयर। इसमें जैसे महिलाओं का प्रतिनिधित्व बढ़ेगा, उसमें रिप्रेजेंटेशन बढ़ेगा, मुझे लगता है तो और ये जो एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री है इट विल ब्रिंग और सम पॉजिटिव चेंजेस फॉर विमेन ऑल्सो।
बट मैम आप मेरे साथ बैठना, मुझे आपकी कहानियाँ सुनिए, मतलब मेरे इतने अच्छे अच्छे आइडिया आपने ऐसे ही दे दिए। आप क्यों ना चाहे मेरे साथ?
There are many of my friends from Bharatiya Stree Shakti are sitting there, and they can share so many stories which we come across society when we work on our counseling centers। ऐसी कितनी कहानियाँ रियल टाइम स्टोरीज हमारे पास आती है, जरूर विल शेयर विथ यू।
वी मस्ट बी, ये चाय पे चर्चा जरूर करेंगे।
जी, नाइस टॉकिंग।
Very important point that she has raised, Naina ji ने जो उठाया।
As an actor, sometimes you're given something to do which is problematic, but then, and it's a very personal choice, right? So I'm offering you a perspective on this. There's a film that I released, I don't know if you guys have seen, called Giant Unchained.
Yes.
Yeah? And Leonardo, yes, Tarantino directed it. Leonardo played a white guy who hates black people, and he spits on them and he kills them and he just does not even think of them as human. And I remember watching the making of that in his interview, saying that, there's a moment when I had to spit on my fellow actor, my colleague, and I just couldn't do it because it was so disturbing. Because it's not just me humiliating another person on the basis of his color and his race, but it's also the generational racism that has been going on, what the film is trying to address. But at that point in time, he chose to do that part because an actor of his stature doing that would create a conversation around it. Now I'm saying sometimes it can also be used to an advantage. Often I think and question myself, will I ever, play a character which I have to kill a child? I can't think of anything possibly worse than that. But could there be maybe a lesson in it? Maybe somehow could that perform? I mean, again, these are all hypotheticals, and absolutely, I don't think creators can absolve themselves of social responsibility. And I know and I don't want to talk about any specific film or maker because I feel rather uncomfortable doing that because they're not here. I think they should be here to defend them. So without trying to participate in a specific film conversation, I think yes, it is happening when your moral compass feels that something is wrong, but that film goes on to becoming a blockbuster. But having said that, people are watching it. Same way people watch porn, or anything else, or violence, or I send you like a MMS clip, and before you know it, it's become viral. That is the power of media, and we can't deny that. Having said that, box office nobody remembers, and that's also a fact.
Yeah.
There are films that will outlive the box office of a particular film, so I don't think we should lose heart just yet.
And just one of the positives, just looking at this panel that we've come and learned about today.
Can I put my
Sure, ma'am,
perspective?
please.
Priyanka talked about social responsibility, and I find two challenges as of now. पहले हमारी एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री कम्युनिटी लेवल पे हम जाते थे, मतलब फिल्म हाउस में सिनेमा घर में जाके परिवार के साथ देखते थे. नाउ वी हैव कम टू पर्सनलाइज एंड कस्टमाइज गैजेट. हर बच्चा 4 साल का हो या 80 साल का बूढ़ा हो बुढ़ी हो, वो अपने अपने गैजेट पर देख रहे हैं. सो व्हाट कंटेंट इज बीइंग ट्रांसफॉर्म गिवन टू द पीपल, और वो जब अकेले वो कुछ देख रहे हैं तो उसका इम्पैक्ट उनके ऊपर कैसे हो रहा है. मुझे लगता है कि एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री विल हैव थिंक ऑन दिस. एंड सेकेंडली आई वांटेड टू मेक सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी के बारे में. जैसे मुझे याद आता है मैं बताऊँगी, क्योंकि वन मोर पर्टिकुलर, हाँ आई गॉट इट. अभी जब हम डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं कि एंटरटेनमेंट इंडस्ट्री कैसे बदलाव आ रहा है, कैसे परिवर्तन आ रहा है, महिलाओं का रिप्रेजेंटेशन उस पर कैसे बढ़ रहा है. अभी जो जमाना है वो चैट जीपीटी पे स्टोरीज और स्क्रीन
was inspiring you and you believe that they should continue to do more so that. So you have to say who the person is and then you have to like, then they'll record like you sliding into